Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up first, hazardous weather graphic, and got a snow advisory out here in the northern panhandle. That's out until, let's see, tonight into tomorrow, and that's for, and it was specifically along the Haines Highway. Get them straight, along the Haines and Klondike Highway, and snowfall along the Klondike Highway expected to be 7 inches overnight tonight and into tomorrow, and along the Haines Highway anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow. Temperatures cooled enough cold air seeped into the northern areas there to bring the snowfall levels down to the ground. Winter weather advisory here also for the western Kenai Peninsula, and that is out through tonight. Actually started this afternoon, and that's out through tonight until 6 p.m. Monday, tomorrow afternoon, and could see another 4 to 8 inches of snow during the next 24 hours here across the western Kenai Peninsula. And some of that could start blowing and drifting around as some northwest winds begin to increase tomorrow during the day. And that's specifically north of Clam Gulch. So it cuts off at anywhere south of Clam Gulch is out of the advisory zone there. And then Bristol Bay, winter weather advisory out this evening and into tonight, actually until 1 p.m. Monday as well here, and that's for several inches of snow. Gusty northwest winds could reduce visibilities there to about half a mile, and same pattern going on up here from the Alaska Range up across the central eastern interior up at Tanana Valley, 40-mile country into the upper Yukon Valley there. That's for snow. Winter weather advisory for snow, some which could start drifting and blowing around, reducing visibilities. Look for several inches. The amounts will be kind of varied and variable, as they usually are up here, but nothing that would trigger a winter storm warning. And then the winter weather advisory here on the central Arctic coast, that expires at 6 p.m. this evening. Central coast areas there still gusting earlier today, gusting 40-45 miles an hour, and I noticed they've come down to about 35 in the gusts now. And that'll continue to drop off. And moving on to satellite imagery, see a system right here, cold upper trough linking up with some moisture coming up from the northeast, or coming up from the southwest to northeast, and low pressure developing right in this area, tracking northward, and a lot of moisture pushing into the southeast coast. Nothing heavy so far, but you can see the still a long ways to go. A lot of cloudiness and moisture to roll in, and in fact the back here, so we're looking for the snow advisory for the Kenai Peninsula, and had some areas of light snow up over the eastern interior, but nothing very significant. In fact, the rainfall was about maybe up to 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch, with the 1/3 of an inch falling at Cordova today, and southeast coast about 1/4 of an inch fell at Sitka. Contrast that with about 0.08 at Annette, so really not any heavy rain coming in, just clouds and rain. And gusty winds there ahead of the front, gusting up to 45-50 miles an hour with some gale warnings there along the coast with the strongest gusts there at 45 to 50 miles an hour occurring at Cape Decision. And some of the inside islands had 30-35 mile an hour winds as well. Let's see, it was up there by Juneau, and I forget the name of the island. It's just southwest of Juneau. They had gusts 40 miles an hour, and that's going to continue. You can see the gradient here associated with that due to the low pressure back over the Gulf of Alaska. That kicked the winds up, and the rain, light rain in the south, a little bit more moderate in the north, and then some snow going on today, Haines and the Klondike Highway, and some rain on the North Gulf Coast, snow, south central Alaska finally, and this low tracking up just right. Good snow setup here for inland areas of the southern, south central, and some of that spilling into the Copper River Basin, and then actually snow showers extending up, as I mentioned, into the eastern interior. areas there, and that'll continue, if not get a little more widespread tonight, and that's why the snow advisory is out for those areas. A few flurries on the central Arctic coast again, but the wind, the major factor up there, and it's diminishing. No wind here over the northwest interior down to the Yukon Delta. Distinct lack of a gradient there, a weak low over the Russian Far East right through here. And a trough sliding some snow showers southward into the Pribilofs today, and some scattered rain and snow showers occurring over the Fox Islands. Tad more numerous there along the west Alaska Peninsula. And good westerly flow pulling cold air that's coming southward out of the Russian Far East, taking a turn to the east. And so just snow today over the western Aleutians. Still some mixture rain and snow at Atka, but that snowfall levels will drop down to sea level out there this evening and overnight tonight. And for tomorrow, just look for widespread area of snow and snow showers here with breezy conditions, west winds 20 to 30, maybe gusts a little bit higher there for the areas along and just north of the Aleutian chain there. And northwest or west-northwest, kind of brisk tonight, and also snowfall levels dropping down to near sea level for the Alaska Peninsula. And then snow showers taper off as you head north, clearing a little cooler here back in the west, and more snow. Cook Inlet, Anchorage, Palmer, into the Manuska and Susitna Valleys, Copper River Basin, and along this trough all the way, just reaching the eastern Arctic coast. Front pushes in tonight here for the Panhandle, and that's going to bring moderate amounts of rain, a little heavier than what you saw today, and the winds still pretty gusty. Gale warnings, gusts to 50 miles an hour or so until the front pushes through. And then for Monday, we've got another system developing, pretty weak though, and moving up to the northeast with low pressure hanging in the Prince William Sound area there. So snowfall continues for the Kenai Peninsula, up into Manuska Valley areas, Susitna Valley, but tapering off over toward the Alaska Range. Mostly sunny and cool back here in the west up to the Noatak Valley. Scattered snow showers along the southwest coast, and even more scattered and isolated over the Pribilofs. And this system brings a chance of snow to the Aleutians. And the outlook for Tuesday, that system takes a turn to the east here and really weakens, just a weak center, 1,011 millibars. This marries a light snow there with the cold air still hanging over the Bristol Bay and southeast Bering Sea. And the next system bringing warmer southwest winds in, so rain and possible gale force winds coming in with that system there. Tightest gradient, though, up in this area for the strongest winds. Any storm force winds would be up in that zone. And some snow showers here with this trough over the northwest interior down into the Tanana Valley. Actually, snow showers extending to a certain extent into the Copper River Basin and northern Cook Inlet, Anchorage, Palmer, maybe Sutton, and some snow chances over the northern Panhandle with the cold air in place, and mixed rain and snow all the way down to Dixon Entrance. And for the lows for tonight or Monday morning, both tonight and Monday morning, up mid-30s to lower 40s there for the Panhandle, near freezing at Kodiak at the state airport there, otherwise mid-20s, Cook Inlet, Manuska Valley, Susitna Valley, and near 20 Copper River Basin, 5 to 10 up there in the Tanana Valley eastern interior, dropping below zero with the clearing skies here. Brooks Range into the greater Kobuk area, and either side of zero on the Arctic coast with lows in the single numbers all the way out to the southwest coastline now, with lower 20s for Macoriac, upper 20s for the Pribilofs and St. Lawrence Island, near 30 for the far western Aleutians, otherwise 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. And then the highs tomorrow, upper 30s, lower 40s here for the peninsula, lower 40s for Fox Islands, near 40 in the Aleutians, upper 30s in the Pribilofs, near freezing there for St. Lawrence Island, and mid-teens here in the northeast interior, and actually mid to upper teens for the Tanana Valley, and highs tomorrow, south central Alaska, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, mid to upper 20s. So no, the snow that fell today and tonight will not melt tomorrow. And for the, so we may have one day in a row of snow that sticks around, probably be longer than that though. Upper 30s here to mid 40s for the Arctic coast, I'm sorry, the North Gulf coast, upper 30s to mid 40s for the Panhandle. And then for Tuesday morning lows, still above freezing here for the southeast coast, lower to, we're in the 30s, up 20s along the North Gulf coast, a little chillier, 10 to 15, maybe 5 or 0 to 15 here, Susitna Valley and the Kenai Peninsula, and near zero for the Copper River Basin. And up there, look for lows to 10 below from the Brooks Range across the North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast, with highs in the, or lows in the lower 20s to up mid 20s there along the Bering Sea coast. And then the highs, kind of chilly here, single numbers over a good portion of interior Alaska, with highs near 20 from Anchorage.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to Monday morning's first line weather graphic. Some IFR coming into the central Bering Sea there. Otherwise, starting out VFR for the Pribilos right up to the southwest coast, Bristol Bay and western Cook Inlet, and then pretty good zone of IFR here from the Gulf of Alaska up across the eastern interior on up to the North Slope and Brooks Range, and marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula, and Aleutians, exception being some VFR for Adak and Atka, and IFR for the Panhandle. Breaks out somewhat, kind of shifts off to the east there, and is stacked up along the border, but VFR showing up along the central coast tomorrow afternoon. IFR still North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound into northern Cook Inlet, north of Kenai. Just south though, roughly cutoff point there is Kenai to Anchor Point. It'll be VFR down across Kodiak into Bristol Bay, the inland areas here, and then IFR up the Alaska Range into the mid and upper Tanana Valley, 40 mile country IFR tomorrow. IFR North Slope Central Arctic Coast, IFR Seward Peninsula, Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, and then looks like St. George there, VFR. And for Tuesday morning, still good IFR here over the, from the central interior, Tanana, there across the Tanana Valley, 40 mile country up into the eastern part of the Yukon Flats, and some IFR there north side or along and north of the Brooks Range and in over the central North Slope, marginal for the Arctic coast. IFR St. Lawrence Island, just barely hanging on to the Yukon Delta, marginal for the Alaska Peninsula here, and areas of VFR, Prince of Wales Island VFR, otherwise the southeast coast, still pretty marginal to locally IFR. And then for the afternoon, not much change here. We've got from roughly Sitka on down across Craig, Klawock to Heidelberg, VFR, and IFR over toward the border. And that zone actually links up with this one here. So the Yukon's pretty IFR'd in, but IFR, Copper River Basin, and along the eastern and central Alaska Range, southern Kuskokwim Valley VFR, Kuskokwim Delta VFR as well, into Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, looking pretty good Tuesday afternoon. Kodiak still VFR. Then areas of IFR, VFR, and marginal VFR up to the north, and another batch of IFR coming eastward there into the western Bering Sea, mostly just north of the Aleutians. Anaktuvik tomorrow looks to be marginal at times. Same forecast for Adigan, marginal VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR. Rainy starting out IFR and then becoming marginal. Windy IFR the entire day. Same forecast for Isabel, Nintesta IFR, Tanita IFR, and Portage looks marginal. Could become VFR. Get some pretty good west winds coming through the pass there, so that could clear it out on the east side. And then for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Looking at the freezing levels here, the pattern shifting off to the east here. So we got 2,000 to 6,000 feet across the Panhandle, otherwise back to the west here at the surface, hugging the coastline. Now east of Kodiak Island, but still a fair ways up into the Bering Sea here. Otherwise, 2,000 feet's off the chart down to the south. And for icing, system just south of the central Aleutians here will bring a threat of some light to isolated moderate rime icing to Adak and Atka during the day tomorrow. And the heavier, more significant icing will be along the eastern North Gulf Coast and the northern Panhandle. There you can see some areas of considerable moderate rime icing with lighter icing down to the south, and an area, actually quite a swath of a chance of seeing some isolated moderate here. Gulf of Alaska, eastern interior, kind of angling back to the northwest there across the North Slope and the Arctic coast. Jet stream, upper level low, tracking eastward here, bringing the colder air and snow in today across southern Alaska. Main jet right into the Panhandle, about 100 knots, south of the Aleutians there, 9,000 feet. Good northwest winds screaming right across Kodiak Island from the Aleutian Range. 50 to 65 knots and 25 to 35 southwesterlies into the Panhandle. At 3,000 feet, 25 to 30 right along the coast. 50-knot winds for Kodiak. Turbulence, occasional moderate chop, Kodiak Island, southern Alaska, the Panhandle, and the Aleutians.
Just as the sun is part of weather on Earth, it also affects weather in space. The sun creates solar wind by steadily releasing a flow of plasma particles in all directions around it. Sometimes the sun gives off a flash of light and X-rays. This is known as a solar flare. When massive bursts of particles explode into space, we call it a coronal mass ejection, or CME. When a CME is directed toward Earth, it hits the magnetosphere, the magnetic field around our planet that protects us. If the storm is large, we may even get to enjoy a light display in the sky called the auroras. In space, satellites may be damaged, and astronauts should take cover. On Earth, people do not feel any physical effects. We may lose electricity in some areas, polar flights may be rerouted, and satellite services may be disrupted. While these situations aren't ideal, they are rare and fixable. This is why we will continue to study the sun and its interactions with Earth and the solar system.
Longing for more space, open skies, and exotic travel? Then look up, about 30 to 600 miles straight up, at the ionosphere, Earth's interface to space. Nestled far above the clouds but below outer space, this little understood destination invites you to explore its many features. Experience both the weather from Earth and the weather from space. Marvel at the ballet of radio waves and navigation signals, like GPS, leaping through this particle paradise. Sit back, relax, and take in the aurora, some satellites, and the International Space Station as they sail by. And you'll want your camera handy for one of the region's signature features, bright and colorful air glow. This daily show is made possible by the ionosphere's own swarming charged particles, because that's what the ionosphere is. It's all charged particles. During the day, enjoy the sea of particles, freshly energized by the sun. As the sun sets, this particle party relaxes and the air glow thins. Our quieter nightlife lets you gaze into clearer skies. The ionosphere is in constant motion, an amazing effect of space weather. Don't miss when solar storms rain down. The storm separates the particles even more, making this colorful region delightfully more dense in some places and stunningly sparse in others. And don't forget about storms from Earth below. Your weather from back home also stirs up this one-of-a-kind destination. Experience the unique beauty of every season, as changes in Earth's atmosphere, daily and annually, can create pressure waves, changing the ionosphere's shape and density. Venture to the equator, where our particles are packed in lush and thick. Cruise along a magnetic field line and see how the ionosphere's charged material also interacts with Earth's own magnetic field. Don't miss the superhighway of particles zipping out to space and back down to the planet. This unpredictable parade of charged particles can help you unplug and unwind. This is because the crowd of particles can garble the radio and satellite communications from home. The ionosphere welcomes you to discover more about this little-known region. After all, once you've explored this interface to space, who knows how much farther you'll be able to go.
When a star, bigger and more massive than the Sun, runs out of fuel at the end of its life, its core collapses while the outer layers are blown off in a supernova explosion. What's left behind depends on the star's original mass. A star roughly 10 to 20 times our Sun leaves behind a neutron star. A more massive star becomes a black hole. Unlike black holes, neutron stars are directly observable, usually as pulsars, the lighthouses of the cosmos. Discovered 50 years ago, they are the densest observable objects in the universe. Neutron stars compress up to twice the Sun's mass into a city-sized sphere. Matter is packed so tightly that a teaspoon of neutron star interior would weigh more than 1 billion tons on Earth. Still, the nature of the ultra-dense matter in the cores of neutron stars is unknown. Because neutron stars pack so much mass into such a tiny volume, they produce gravity strong enough to bend the light they emit, distorting their appearance in a way that enables the mass and size of the star to be measured. Scientists cannot reproduce the extreme conditions in and around neutron stars on Earth. They must look into the galaxy to answer decades-old questions about extreme matter and gravity. NASA's Neutron Star Interior Composition Explorer mission, or NISA, will make X-ray observations of neutron stars from its perch on the International Space Station. It will give astronomers more insight into these mysterious objects, helping determine what is under their surface. A multi-purpose mission, NISA includes a technology demonstration called Sextant. It will analyze NISA's observations to validate the use of rapidly rotating neutron stars as navigation beacons for travel in deep space throughout the solar system and beyond.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at coastal water forecasts, pretty brisk out along the coast tomorrow. West winds 30 knots, seas about 18 to 20 feet, and gale warnings on the north coast, southwest 35 knots, seas in the lower 20s, and gale warnings out for Lynn Canal, southerlies 35 knots, seas 7 feet, and south winds 25 knots for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, southeast 25 with 8-foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday, we've got west winds 20 to 25 knots on the south coast, southwest winds 25 knots on the north coast, with the seas up here close to 20 feet and about 18 feet down south, southwest 20 for Clarence Strait, southerlies 20 knots, northern and central inside waters, those seas only about 4 feet. And for the, Prince William Sound, small craft advisories tomorrow, northeast 25 and northwest at 15 for Cook Inlet. Those pick up to westerly here for southern Cook Inlet at 30 knots, 6-foot seas, and then pretty good storms, definitely, especially for Kamishak Bay, west 55 knots sustained, seas 17 feet, 50 knots out of the west for the Barren Islands, and 45 knots here for the western North Gulf Coast, and minimum gales there on the east side with seas even there about 20 feet, actually around 20 feet the entire, both along the zones here. And for Tuesday, northwest 30 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast, northwest 25, higher gusts out of the northern and western bays here for Prince William Sound, 6-foot seas. And western North Gulf Coast down to 30 knots from the northwest, and now minimum gales, so slowly coming down here but not ending completely for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. Cook Inlet, north winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Bristol Bay tomorrow, northwest at 20, Alaska Peninsula westerlies 25 to 30 knots, seas running 9 to 13 feet, and 30-knot winds from the west all the way up to Sitkinak. Call it 40 knots sustained out of the west there for Kodiak Island. Could be even stronger late tonight and early tomorrow morning. Gales also for Shelikof Strait. Outlook for Tuesday, west winds at 20 here for Shelikof Strait. Small craft advisories east side of Kodiak. Winds slowly continue a downward trend, but hold at about 25 knots throughout the day. But coming down to 15 here from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southwest 25 for the Alaska Peninsula, lighter east winds at 15 for Bristol Bay. Fox Islands tomorrow, west winds, small craft advisory westerlies, 25 to 30 knots, seas running 11 to 14 feet here. Central Aleutians, west winds 30 knots, seas a little bit higher, 12 to 16 feet, and 30-knot winds out to, say, Kiska turn northwest at 25 from Kiska to Shemya. And for Tuesday, next system coming in from the west there, south winds, good gales there, 45 knots, far western Aleutians. Kiska Island to Samchitka, southwest 40, and then westerlies at 30 for the Adak and Atka area, 15 to 17 foot seas. Northwest gales here blowing across Unmak and Unalaska Islands, 35 to 40 knots, seas running 16 to 20 feet. Along the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, southwest winds tomorrow 20 knots, southeast 20 along the Yukon Delta coast up to St. Lawrence Island, east at 10 for Norton Sound, west-northwest here for the Pribilofs, northern Bering Sea at about 25 knots, 10 to 12 foot seas. North winds at 10 on Tuesday for Norton Sound, northeast 20, St. Lawrence Island. Lighter here along the southwest coast, northeast 10 to 15 knots, 5 to 7 foot seas. Northwest at 30 for the Pribilofs, and north at 20 with 10 foot seas for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, not too bad on the east side, only 15 knots out of the east. Pick up to about 20 there as you head toward the central coast where it's 25 knots. So brisk wind or small craft advisories there. And turning east at 25, small craft advisories along the west coast as well. And then from Cape Beaufort down to Wales, looking at 15 knot winds from the east-southeast. And then those will increase considerably, double the speed there from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, 30 knots, north-northeast, northeast, 20 knots, western central coast, and the eastern coast there, not too bad, north, 10 to 15. And for tonight again, this low moving up into the North Gulf Coast here. Snow advisory, western Kenai Peninsula tonight through tomorrow afternoon. Snow, Copper River Basin, wind weather advisories up in the central and upper Tanana Valley and the Yukon Valley as well. And rain and gale force winds for the southeast coast tonight. And then that first front actually pushes through. Another one forms out here in the cold air and moves in tomorrow afternoon with more gale force winds and precipitation. Snow continues southeast Alaska, lightening up as you head north. And then it looks like less in the way of snow over the interior, but colder for the panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.